My name is Rachel Meyer. I'm 31 years old, and I still remember the exact night my world tilted on its axis. It wasn't a thunderstorm or an accident, nothing sudden or violent. No, it was quieter than that, so much quieter, and maybe that's why it cut so deep. We were sitting across from each other at the dining table, plates of pasta cooling between us. I had spent the afternoon making it from scratch, rolling the dough, simmering the sauce the way he always said he loved. But he didn't touch it. He just kept swirling his fork around, not meeting my eyes. Finally, he set the fork down with a sharp clink against the plate. His jaw tightened, and he leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. "You're holding me back, Rachel," he said flatly. I blinked, certain I had misheard. "What?" "You heard me," he continued, his voice low, controlled, the way it always was when he wanted to land a blow. "You're ordinary, predictable, and I can't build the kind of life I want with someone who's satisfied being average." The room spun. The steam from the pasta rose in faint wisps, the smell of garlic now sickening in my nose. My chest tightened as if invisible hands were pressing down. "Ordinary," my voice cracked. "I've been with you through everything. The late nights, the rejections, the bills." He raised a hand, cutting me off like a lecturer silencing a student. "Exactly. You've been there, but you've never pushed me. You don't challenge me. I feel like I'm dragging you along, and honestly, I don't want to anymore." The words fell heavy between us, each one carving a canyon where our marriage used to be. I wanted to scream, to throw the plate against the wall, to demand how the man I had loved for nearly a decade could look me in the eye and call me a weight around his neck. But I didn't. I sat frozen, staring at him, wondering when exactly the person who once kissed my forehead and whispered dreams about our future had turned into this stranger. He leaned forward then, his eyes sharp. "I deserve more. And I'm done waiting for you to catch up." Something inside me cracked. I didn't know it yet, but that was the moment, the exact moment when the foundation of my life gave way. Everything after this dinner would change. Because when your husband looks at you and tells you you're the anchor sinking his ship, you only have two choices: let yourself drown with him, or learn how to swim without him. And I was about to find out just how far I could swim. Hang on, before I tell you what happened next, make sure you've subscribed and left your thoughts in the comments. This part gets intense. When I look back now, I can see the cracks were always there. Tiny hairline fractures hidden under the weight of promises, disguised as love, brushed aside with excuses I made for him. I was 23 when I met him. The world still felt wide open, and so did I. He was charming in that dangerous way. Quick with a joke, quicker with a compliment. He made me feel seen in a city that so often swallowed people whole. First, that was enough. We built a life together in a shoebox apartment with peeling paint and a leaky faucet. I didn't mind the flaws because he made everything sound temporary. "This is just the beginning," he'd say, wrapping his arm around me as we shared takeout straight from the carton. "One day, you'll laugh about this when we're living in a place with actual walls that don't crumble." I wanted to believe him. And for a while I did. He told me I was his anchor. Said my steadiness kept him from flying too close to the sun. I took pride in that role. When his ideas fell flat, I was the one who rewrote his pitches late into the night. When investors asked tough questions, I was the one who taught him how to answer without crumbling. I didn't just support him, I built him. Brick by brick, word by word. But he never saw it that way. The first time I felt it, the shift, I brushed it off as stress. He came home from a failed meeting, angry, pacing the length of our living room. "They didn't get it," he snapped, tossing his jacket onto the couch. I tried to soothe him. "Maybe if we adjust the deck, simplify the—" "I don't need simple," he cut in. "I need people who think bigger. You don't understand scale, Rachel." The words were sharp, but the look on his face was worse. cold, dismissive, like I was a student who'd answered wrong. He softened later, brought flowers, kissed my forehead and said, "You're my lucky charm." But that night, lying awake with those words circling my brain, I realized something. He had started to see me not as a partner, but as a prop. And I let it slide. Because that's what love does. It blinds you with memory. I remembered the boy who danced with me in our empty kitchen. The man who whispered promises against my skin when we had nothing. I told myself stress changes people, but it always passes. Then came the sacrifices. He asked me to quit my agency job and join him full-time. "This is our shot," he said, his eyes burning with conviction. "We'll build something together. 50-50. I wanted to believe in together. I handed in my notice, traded steady paychecks for late nights and ramen noodles. I designed the brand, built the website, answered emails, smoothed over angry clients. He stood on stages and said "I" while I sat in the crowd, clapping until my palms stung. Still, I told myself it was okay. He was the face, I was the backbone. Every story needs both. But the cracks widened. He started coming home late, smelling like whiskey and expensive cologne. He brushed it off. "Networking," he'd say, unbuttoning his shirt while talking about some investor I'd never met. At dinners, he compared me to other women. Women who looked the part. Women who commanded the room. "You're too cautious," he'd say lightly, as though it was advice, not criticism. "That's why I'm the one who takes the risks." It was death by 1,000 cuts. He forgot my birthday one year, then claimed he was planning something big that never happened. He cropped me out of a photo he sent to his investors because, as he put it, they only care about the business, not the background. When we argued, his tone changed. He spoke slowly, deliberately, like I was a burden he had to correct. "You think too small. You're holding us back." Back then, I didn't have the strength to ask the question clawing at my chest. If I was holding him back, why was I the one keeping everything afloat? Because the truth was, I was. While he boasted about bootstrapping, I was the one secretly picking up freelance projects to keep the lights on. While he bragged about sacrificing comfort for the dream, I was the one skipping meals so our bills were paid. I was both the foundation and the safety net, but he made me feel like the deadweight. And then the financial lies started to leak through. It began with an envelope. Cream paper, official font. "Congratulations," it read. A new line of credit. My name, my signature. Except it wasn't mine. I remember standing in the kitchen, coffee gone cold in my hand, staring at the letter until the words blurred. My thumb traced the fake version of my own signature, shaky but close enough to fool a bank clerk. My heart sank. I called the number, desperate for a mistake. The operator read back details. A new email address one letter off from mine, a phone number I didn't recognize. "You opened this account on Monday at 3:19 p.m., she said cheerfully. Monday at 3:19 p.m., I was in line at the pharmacy, picking up his vitamins because he claimed he was too busy. The room tilted. My pulse thundered in my ears. I hung up and pressed my hands against the counter, grounding myself against the cool surface. My reflection stared back at me from the stainless steel toaster, eyes wide, mouth slightly open, like a stranger who had just woken up in my body. That was the night I stopped brushing it off. The cracks weren't small anymore. They were gaping. And I realized something terrifying. He wasn't just belittling me. He was rewriting the story of us entirely. On paper, in accounts, in debts I hadn't chosen. And I was running out of time to stop him. That same night, as I sifted through our documents, I found something buried under old contracts. A wire transfer slip dated just 2 days earlier. The money had gone to an account I didn't recognize. The memo line. 3 words that froze my blood. Founders Event Deposit. Before we move on, take a second to hit subscribe and drop a comment. I'd love to hear what you think so far. The wire transfer slip lay in front of me like a wound on paper. My hands trembled as I read it over and over, hoping the numbers would rearrange themselves into something less devastating. But they didn't. The account number wasn't ours, and the memo, Founder's Event Deposit, didn't match anything we'd ever discussed. Felt sick. The air in the apartment seemed too thin. I pressed a palm to my chest, trying to calm the pounding rhythm of my heart. Questions clawed at me. Who was he paying? What event? Why was my name, my signature, on loans I hadn't agreed to while he was wiring money elsewhere? For the first time, I allowed myself to consider the possibility that he wasn't just careless. He was calculated. The next day I decided to test him. He came home late again, smelling faintly of smoke and whiskey. His tie hung loose around his neck, and he tossed his jacket onto the couch with practiced ease. "Rough day?" I asked, forcing my voice to sound casual. "Brutal," he muttered, grabbing a beer from the fridge. "Investors want me to expand faster. They don't understand the pressure I'm under." My grip tightened on the edge of the counter. "Funny," I said, watching his face carefully. "Because I found a wire transfer for an event deposit. Care to explain?" His eyes flicked toward me, narrowing for a split second before his expression smoothed. "You went through the files. You forged my signature," I shot back, my voice rising. "You opened accounts in my name, and now there's money going places I don't recognize. What the hell is going on?" For a moment he didn't speak. He just took a long sip of his beer, as though weighing his response. Then he laughed. Actually laughed. "You wouldn't understand," he said finally. I stared at him, disbelief flooding through me. "Try me. It's networking. It's business dinners. Events. Things you wouldn't get because you're not cut out for this world." His tone dripped with condescension. "You're useful for the small stuff, designing websites, answering emails, but this is big league. This is why I can't tell you everything." Anger scorched through me. "You mean this is why you lie to me?" He slammed the beer bottle onto the counter, glass rattling. "Don't twist my words. I'm doing this for us. For our future. You should be thanking me, not interrogating me like some jealous wife." The phrase sliced through me, jealous wife. As if my outrage over fraud and secrecy was just petty insecurity. That night I barely slept. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the words circling like vultures. Useless. Holding me back. Jealous wife. Each one dug deeper into my skin. But the worst was still coming. A week later, the truth hit me with the force of a car crash. I had decided to surprise him. Not out of love. By then my love was bruised and bleeding, but out of suspicion. I knew he had another business dinner scheduled at a downtown hotel, and something in my gut told me I needed to be there. I dressed in black, pulling my coat tight against the chill evening air, and hailed a cab. My heart hammered as the city lights blurred past. Every instinct screamed that I was about to walk into something I couldn't unsee. The hotel lobby smelled of polished marble and expensive perfume. I kept my head down, moving quickly toward the restaurant. My eyes scanned the tables until they landed on him. He was laughing. Across from him sat a woman I'd never seen before. Sleek hair, flawless dress, manicured hands resting on the stem of her wineglass. He leaned across the table, his voice low. His eyes locked on hers in a way that made my stomach twist. I froze in the doorway, bile rising in my throat. The woman touched his arm, and he didn't pull away. Instead, he smiled the same smile he'd once reserved for me, the one that made me believe in beginnings, in promises, in forever. I felt like the floor had vanished beneath me. I forced myself to move closer, blending into the crowd of waiters and guests. My ears rang, my vision tunneled, but I caught fragments of their conversation. "You're the reason I keep pushing through the stress," he murmured. After the event, we'll finally be official, she whispered back. My blood ran cold. Official. The wire transfer. The lies. The late nights. It all crashed into place like a puzzle snapping together. He wasn't just cheating. He was building a future with her, funded by money stolen in my name. My knees nearly gave out. I stumbled back, colliding with a waiter carrying a tray of glasses. He muttered an apology, but I barely heard him. All I could hear was the shattering in my chest, the brutal truth ringing in my ears. He had been living a double life, and I had been the fool paying for it. I fled the hotel before either of them noticed me. Rain pelted down as I stepped into the street, soaking my hair, blurring my vision. I didn't even bother with an umbrella. I just walked, blind with grief, until my legs ached and my shoes squelched with water. By the time I returned home, I was drenched, shivering, hollow. I collapsed onto the couch, clutching a pillow like it might hold me together. The next morning, he waltzed in as if nothing had happened. His tie was crisp, his smile polished. "Long night," he said, kissing my cheek absently before heading to the shower. The scent of her perfume clung to him. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the transfer slip, the credit card statements, the memory of their laughter. My hands trembled, but this time it wasn't weakness. It was rage, white-hot, unstoppable rage. He thought I was ordinary, disposable, a prop in his story. But he had underestimated me. Because that morning, as the shower roared in the background, I whispered a vow to myself, sharp and cold as steel. I will burn down the life you built on my back. And when the ashes settle, I'll be the one standing. Later that day, while he was still at work, I opened his laptop, something I'd never dared to do before. Buried in his emails was a folder labeled Private. Inside was a contract, unsigned but ready. The title line, Partnership Agreement. And the partner's name wasn't mine. Before we go any further, click subscribe and let me know in the comments. What would you have done in my shoes? The folder on his laptop was a door into a world I was never meant to see. Page after page, I scrolled through contracts, proposals, and private messages. There were mock-ups for a new company, branding, logos, even launch dates. His signature was there, but mine wasn't. My name had been scrubbed out like I was a ghost that never existed. And in her place, hers. The sleek woman from the hotel. She was listed as his strategic partner, complete with a projected equity split. The number next to her name dwarfed mine. I was nothing more than a silent liability in his eyes, a wallet with legs. My chest heaved as I read through the fine print. He had shifted assets, our assets, into this new venture. In the margins, I saw scribbles about cutting ties cleanly and transitioning post-divorce. Divorce. The word blurred through my tears, but I forced myself to keep reading. Because knowledge was power. And if he wanted war, he had just handed me the ammunition. That night, while he snored beside me, I lay awake replaying everything. His smirks, his dismissals, his laughter with her. And for the first time, the grief began to harden into something sharp and unbreakable. Rage. But rage alone wouldn't save me. I needed precision. I needed a plan. The next morning, I reached out to an old college friend who worked in finance. I didn't tell her everything, just enough to pique her curiosity. Hypothetically, I said, if someone's business partner was moving money into hidden accounts, how would you trace it? She didn't ask questions. She just sent me tools, spreadsheets, and advice. For days, I became a ghost in my own home. By day, I smiled, cooked dinner, pretended to be the oblivious wife he thought I was. By night, I mapped out his empire, following digital breadcrumbs he never thought I'd find. Bank transfers, hidden credit cards, a rented apartment in another name. Every discovery was a dagger in my chest, but I catalogued them all, one by one. There were moments I almost broke. One evening he came home early, catching me off guard with his laptop open on the dining table. My heart lurched into my throat, but I forced a laugh. "Looking at vacation packages," I lied. "We could use a trip." He smiled, oblivious, and kissed my forehead. "See, this is why I need you, keeping the small stuff handled." The insult barely stung anymore. Because I knew what he didn't. He was building a tower on sand, and I was about to kick it down. The hardest part wasn't the lies. It was the silence. Acting normal while my inside screamed. Pretending I hadn't seen the messages where he called me clingy, ordinary, dead weight. Pretending I didn't know he was siphoning money meant for our home into a fantasy life with her. But the silence gave me time. I researched laws. Copied every file onto a hidden drive. I built my own accounts, untouchable, far from his reach. Slowly, I siphoned my own small income streams, freelance projects he had dismissed as hobbies, into them. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And then came the breakthrough. Buried in his emails was an invite. An exclusive gala, where he and his partner planned to announce their new venture. The date was circled in red on his calendar. That was it. The stage. The perfect moment. I spent nights imagining it. Him standing tall in his suit, her glittering at his side, their smug smiles stretching wide, until I stepped forward with everything I'd gathered. Contracts. Transfers. Proof of lies stacked high enough to crush them both. The thought gave me strength. But still doubts clawed at me. What if no one believed me? What if I looked bitter, desperate, jealous, just like he always said? What if I destroyed him and ended up destroying myself too? I stared into the mirror one night, searching my own eyes for answers. My reflection was pale, tired, but beneath it I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Fire. I wasn't the ordinary woman he mocked. I wasn't fragile. I wasn't disposable. I was the one who had built the foundation he was now standing on. And if he thought he could erase me, he was about to learn the cost of underestimating me. On the morning of the gala, I stood at the closet, staring at the dress I'd chosen. Red, bold, a statement. My hands shook, but not with fear, with anticipation. Because tonight, in front of everyone who mattered in his world, the truth would finally come crashing down. The ballroom glittered that night. Chandeliers rained golden light across polished marble floors, and the air buzzed with chatter and clinking glasses. It was the kind of event he lived for, the kind where status mattered more than sincerity, where appearances were everything. He looked sharp in his tailored suit, hand resting lightly at the back of the woman he once told me was just a colleague. She wore a diamond bracelet that caught the light with every movement. My bracelet, the one I had once saved up to buy him for our anniversary, now hanging on her wrist as if mocking me. I stood at the edge of the crowd, my red dress drawing glances I didn't acknowledge. My fingers brushed the folder in my clutch, the weight of it grounding me. Inside was everything. The transfers, the contracts, the proof of every lie he thought he buried. The announcer tapped the microphone, calling for attention. My husband stepped onto the stage, all charm and false humility. "Tonight," he began, "is about new beginnings, about partnerships that redefine success." His hand slid around her waist. "Together, we're building something extraordinary." The applause was deafening. My chest burned, but I didn't move. Not yet. He spoke of vision and growth, of opportunity and innovation. Every word was another brick in the tower of lies he had built. When he smiled at her, the room melted into admiration. To them he was brilliant, inspiring, untouchable, until I stepped forward. The heels of my shoes echoed against the floor as I walked toward the stage. Heads turned. Whispers rippled. My husband's smile faltered, just for a moment, before he plastered it back on. "My wife," he said into the mic with forced warmth. "Always supportive. Please join us. Cut him off. Supportive. My voice carried stronger than I expected. Is that what you call it? When you drain our accounts? When you rewrite contracts to erase me? When you build an empire on lies and betrayal? Gasps filled the room. His face drained of color. I pulled the documents from my clutch and held them high. This. I slapped the folder onto the podium. This is who he really is. The man who promised me a life together while funneling everything we owned into a fantasy with her. I turned my gaze on the woman beside him. And you. Smiling like you built something. You didn't. You stole. Murmurs erupted, louder now. People craning to see the pages spilling across the podium. Some snapped photos. Others whispered names, dates, numbers. He reached for the mic, desperate. This is nonsense. But I was already pulling out the last piece of evidence. The emails. Projected across the ballroom screen with one click of the USB I had prepared. His words, his insults, his declarations that I was ordinary, clingy, dead weight. The crowd erupted. The woman stepped back, her face twisted with panic. The investors in the front row stared at him with disgust. Phones buzzed, capturing every second. And him. He stood frozen. His empire crumbling in the span of minutes. I leaned into the mic one last time, my voice calm, almost cold. You told me I was nothing without you. Look around. Tonight you've lost everything. And me. I'm just getting started. I stepped down, leaving him in the ruins of his carefully crafted lie. The crowd parted as I walked, some whispering, others watching with wide eyes. Behind me, I heard the investors pulling back, the murmurs of betrayal thick as smoke. By the time I reached the doors, he was shouting, desperate, clawing for control. But it was too late. His voice was just noise now. Outside, the night air was cool, sharp against my skin. I exhaled, the weight lifting from my chest for the first time in years. I wasn't his shadow anymore. I wasn't the woman erased from contracts, dismissed as ordinary. I was free. And in the weeks that followed, I made sure everyone knew it. The evidence spread quickly. Investors cut ties, friends turned cold, the press devoured the scandal. He became a cautionary tale whispered in boardrooms. A man who lost everything because he underestimated the one person who knew him best. As for me, I rebuilt. Not just a life but a legacy. My work, my vision, my name. And this time it was mine alone. Sometimes people ask if I regret it. If I regret standing up in that ballroom and tearing his world apart. I don't. 'Cause he was right about one thing. I was holding him back. From falling faster. So, here's the truth. The man who told me I was holding him back now spends his days choking on the ashes of everything he lost. And me. I became unstoppable the moment I let him fall. If you've ever been told you're nothing without someone, remember this. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let them drown in the lies they built, while you rise higher than they ever imagined.